180! Welcome back to Online Darts, everyone. We're here in Wigan, not far from the African Warriors' home, so we thought, why not? Let's get him in for a chat. Dev, first of all, how are things?
No, it's great, and I mean, Online Darts has grown in great stature, and great to see, obviously, you switching over and making it a real channel that you can actually go for credible news. I mean, you always have Matt Porter on, and everybody obviously picks up that. I saw the interview this morning about him not changing the Premier League, which is fantastic, and him making that joke about your fans would probably love this news. So I think it's great, and like you said, just around the corner, Wigan was also one of the places where I won the first tour card in 2011 where I made. So it's always great to obviously come back to Wigan. There's a lot of success stories and just kind of the journey starting for me, and yeah, me popping around. Things are going great. The injury's completely gone now, which is, I'm thankful for that. So you can I can kind of go back to practicing normally with no pain, but also extended hours, because what was happening was practice 2 hours, then you have to kind of stay a day away from the dartboard, and yeah, that wasn't great. But everything is now back to normal, putting in the hours, being able to play the sport that I love, and I don't feel as almost like that pressure on my shoulders anymore, where, come on, Devon, you're a dart player, this is what you do, and we're throwing with the arm that's kind of not yours, which you're not used to. So yeah, it's really a really fantastic feeling to be back. But I mean, there's loads that has been happening since I've come off the tour, basically.
Yeah, we'll touch on you in a minute, but we've seen it on, obviously, Sky Sports. You did a great bit with Emma. You're launching this amazing resource tool, as you've just called it, to teach kids maths in a fun way. Tell us how this Dartboard Maths all came about.
So the crazy part is it was meant to be an app in the beginning. My son struggled a bit with numbers after his hands. So when you count, obviously it's 5 plus 5, and when you go 6 plus 5, it becomes a juggle. That then became something that kind of crossed over in his classroom, where he started getting some number anxiety, and I saw a lot of, I mean, we're part of like WhatsApp groups with the class, and a lot of the parents was talking about it, like kids are struggling a bit with maths and what's happening and blah, blah, blah. And then I realized that there's just an opportunity to actually teach, but through the fundamentals, how I learned, obviously, darts in a sense. And I then, because of his interest in the sport, him practicing when I'm practicing on a lower board, and then I started just kind of sending him questions and saying, okay, cool, show me where's number 1, show me where's number 2, and just starting with the basics. And that started a platform for me to build on. And then we started introducing odd and even numbers, the different methods, which is addition, number bonds, and all of these things. And I really found a structure that stayed with him and stuck with him. And he started improving in his math results. And when I say math results, they do a test on a Friday, where they look at like a speed test, and his maths results was increasing the more I was increasing. And then I realized that if I structured it in a better way and just unpacked it, made it kid friendly, he'd really absorb it. And like literally it was like with a duck to water. We made maths not about memory, but more about a movement, which I've created a movement man, and everybody knows I do the movement anyway. So it kind of resonates with that. And the sport itself lends it to education, because you actually throw to a calculator, which is literally in front of you, which is a dartboard. So yeah, it was a match made in heaven. But a lot of the sport or in-school introduction to school is always about the sport first and then education. Whereas I flipped it around and went education and then hopefully leading it into the sport, which a lot of through the popularity with Luke Littler and Luke Humphreys winning, and just that rise that and that trend that we're seeing right now, I think it's the perfect time for the sport to get the proper platform that it deserves.
From idea to concept to in your hand, how long has this taken?
It's taken me roughly about 24 months, and that takes into account obviously research, developing, piloting over different kind of levels of I'll call it children's experience within the core math. So I've done grade 4s, I've done grade 6, not grade 6, grade 2s, and then we've looked at special needs, we've looked at just typical learners, we've looked at learners that are struggling with maths concepts. So we've done that, and I've also piloted with some of the top players in the world as well, Luke Humphreys, Michael Smith, Joe Cullen, Chris Dobie, Nathan Aspinall, Dirk van Dievenbode, and Gowan Price as well. And Dirk actually surprised me with one of the quickest times, over 15 questions. I'll show you, I'll send you the link to it, but over that 15 questions, he was able to answer them in 23 seconds, 15 questions. Everybody else did it within 40, 40, and 50. So you look at that level of sharpness. If we can get that to our kids through the sport itself, that is basically will be a win for us. And it's the foundation of not only the schooling career, but it will give them, breed that confidence and competence moving into a career pathway in the future.
Is this also a way to lose the stigma around darts and get it into schools at an early age?
100%, and I think that you hit the nail on the head with that, because stigma needs to change. I think the popularity of the sport is not, it's a global, but I think that where it is within from a TV and entertainment perspective, high level of trend and interaction. But I think that where we're lacking is because the stigma is still attached. It's a pub sport. It's not that level. I mean, JDC do a fantastic job at showing that there's a pathway to professionalism. But I think that early stage, it's not about teaching them how to actually throw, but to make the game engaging is to know how to count. Because if you have number anxiety, darts is really not going to be the game for you, because it's all about numbers. So if there's a fear of numbers, that's already a kind of a bridge that you need to cross, and a barrier that you need to cross. So I think that with them kind of focusing on a daily, I mean, you've increased your math knowledge over the years by just playing the sport anyways. If I told you what was 9 times 19, you'd immediately click it's 171, because that's 3 treble 19s. If you ask anybody else that's not darts orientated, it would be a struggle, because they'll then have to break it up and all of those things. So yeah, I think that the position that we have right now with the things that we've put in place with which is tutorials, learner management system that has data rich analysis to tell you exactly where your kid is in the core math skills ability. That's for each section as well. So it crosses addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. And then we have dynamic maths and champion maths, which then lends itself to the sport itself and combines all of the elements that you've been taught. And then we obviously also have the mascot, which is Darty, and he has 6 other friends as well, which I call them the Darting Avengers, or the Maths Avengers, which will create a mascot character kind of opportunity, so that it becomes collectible, it becomes fun. Kids like toys, I like toys. So you kind of have that. I mean, kids learn about dinosaurs, like my son was talking about dinosaurs I've never heard of, simply because he's seen it with Jurassic Park and all of those. So when you're talking about maths and making them comfortable, creating a mascot like that, something that they can resonate with, not only the subject matter, but understand that it's a friendly environment to learn.
What's the end goal for Dartboard Maths?
I think where we want to be is it shouldn't just be as a school project. It shouldn't just be it's education, but not only in schools. We're looking at whether your child is starting school and a grandparent wants to purchase it, whether you're doing homeschooling, whether it is for learners that are struggling, whether it's for older folks that are struggling and want to learn in a different way. I mean, I've gone to some matches where you play in the leagues, and some of the people do not want to keep score because they feel as though they'll be shown up in front of the dartboard because they don't understand the mathematical structures. And what we want to do is make sure that people understand this is not core for school, but it's a great way to introduce it in schools, because with everything that we want to do, we want to make sure that, I mean, our sport is very accessible and adaptable and needs a small space to kind of be functional. What we want to do now is make sure that the classroom is one of those spaces, but a safe space to learn as well. So my goal is to have this seen globally. I mean, everything that we're doing, we're translating the packs and all of those things into different languages. I think we started with Danish, and then we're going to move over to German, and then obviously, hopefully, every single language that we can.
You touched on Dirk when he took the test, and we've seen that in recent years, that the Dutch and the Belgians in particular have taken counting to a dartboard on a different level. And perhaps here in the UK, I know you've obviously South African, but you've been here a long time. Perhaps we are some way behind that European structure of thinking about maths. So is this, again, a way to bring everyone up to a decent level?
And that's exactly it. I think that because teaching is different, each kid learns differently, structures are different in different schools and how they teach it. It's also based on the engagement level and just the concentration level. If you look at, especially in the European side, especially the Dutch players itself, they used to have darts in schools as part of their module and curriculum. So when you're taking that into schools, that's the reason why they're so sharp and can think. Like, if you look at different outshots and different ways in which they approach their outshots, it's phenomenal. They have a different approach to thinking about percentage doubles, percentage on the throw, and all of those things. And you look at that and you go, how did they manage that? And you understand that it's from a grassroots level, but it hasn't been pushed out globally. So it's just specifically in one country. Now we have a product that kind of bridges the gap and will create a blanket way to learn darts from a grassroots level, and it removes the stress and anxiety from parents that need their kids to kind of cross those barriers where they may be finding it in school and they don't themselves know how to teach maths. Because, I mean, if you're a parent, generally you're not going to be a classroom teacher. So it means that the teaching element is removed there. So we want to make sure that everybody loves the sport that we love. And who knows, we might find another Luke Littler or many other Luke Littlers.
You touched on it there and kind of beat me to it. Are you hoping from a young age this inspires the next generation, not just on the board, but to be complete players?
100%, and I think that with a lot of the discussions that we are having behind the scenes, which we'll make known in the future, but I think that where we are at right now is building a platform so that we don't just go in when they go to the JDC and now you start picking up what they are doing only in the JDC. If we can create that structure within a school level, and we know that the players that are coming through are able to count, then we know that we're skipping and expediting the performance and focusing on the performance so that we can actually coach the player and not really coach them about counting and numbers, because I think that that's the area where we lose most of the players, because it now becomes, oh, I have to do maths. No, I don't want to do that. I'll rather kick a ball. Whereas if we go, if this is what you've been tested on in school or made fun in school, it then easily transitions them into the playing field. And we know that the sport has no boundaries. So like Lisa Ashton and Fallon Sherrock and Bo Greaves, ladies doing phenomenally well, besides everybody else that's in the sport itself. You look at that and you understand that in a classroom, there'll be girls and boys, and they can compete against each other, because generally in most sports it's always separate, but now we can obviously do that through. And the beauty of it all is it's not only about the desk dartboard that's the most important thing, or the counting and the maths. We've created a game called Battle Deck, which is a board game, which is one of the first that involves the calculations of maths and using the dartboard combination. So there's over 1,800 equations on that, and kids can then compete. And we want to create a competition where if you are not great in the throwing ability of the sport itself, but you know the math side of it, we're now going to create a Battle Deck Championships where your math skills will be the #1 skill to have.
For everything you've done in your career in darts and African darts, is this potentially your biggest achievement?
This is by far my not only biggest achievement, but I feel as though in the sport itself, this is my biggest contribution. Because when you're up on the hockey, you can inspire people to be more. When you're playing, you can kind of get that opportunity to open their eyes to realize their dreams and go, if he can do it, I can. I came from the same background as him. I played in the same venues. But now when you realize that you can contribute to a global opportunity for everybody to understand that there's actually education in darts. We all know it. It's not even a myth. But now just to put it together like that, I think that this definitely tops my legacy challenge that I do have for myself, is just how do you leave the biggest mark that you possibly can and make sure that the future of the sport is in good hands through just not only playing, but leaving it in a sound position. And I think that through Dartboard Maths and the Dartboard, it is that.
Talk about inspiring people, and obviously moving on from Dartboard Maths to African darts and what's been achieved there. You must, again, I can see you smiling already before we've even mentioned it. The way African darts has come on, although recent years have been disappointing for yourself, the sport in Africa must fill you with so much joy, the way we see Simon Adams coming through playing in the Super Series, and the smile that he's done getting to the World Championships, and that generation of now coming through from Africa.
It's, I say this and we do so much for the sport itself, and my nature is, even if it's not me succeeding in the sport, we can still succeed as a continent, as a country, as an individual from Africa, and we all bear the same flag. So as long as that flag waves, I don't care who it is. As long as you come through and you represent us as a continent, as an African continent, that's my entire goal. The entire position of the African Darts Group and positioning it with the PDC and being the African affiliate, it's now put us on a platform where we can give the international opportunities, like the Moda Series, as you earlier mentioned, and then we still have the PDC World Champs, PDC World Cup team still representing, and then we have the ADC looking to come into South Africa as well, which is taking UK and Europe by storm. And you see how all of these things are just. The sport itself is growing at a massive rate, and South Africa and Africa has always been left behind. But now with me on that African Darts Group and moving forward with the development of the sport, we're going to make sure that we see more Kendrick Kodums, we're going to see more Cameron Carollisons, Johan Geldeneses and Simon Adams and everybody else that's represented on that main stage. We're giving more Africans an opportunity. And the big thing now for me my next challenge is to bring the sport from the UK and take it to South Africa and show them, you've seen it on TV, you've watched these players all the time, now get to experience it live. And we in the process of making that happen. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot more to be spoken about that.
So from that then, I'm going to put words in your mouth here. You want a World Series event in South Africa pretty soon.
Listen, Phil Bars, you like to do that, and I'm not gonna say yay or nay to what you just said, but my goal is definitely to make sure that with African being or South Africa being at this point in a sporting realm right now, dominating with the Springboks winning, with Driekus du Plessis, you're seeing all of these, the Formula One potentially coming back to South Africa. All of these things. South Africa's a hot pot, not only for the sporting talent, but also showcase and spectacle. So I feel as though if we're going to have an opportunity like that, what better time than now to have it? So my goal is to potentially make sure that the PDC's arm get twisted in some way or form, and make sure that I bring it over to South Africa in the next couple of years. But I mean, it's a big operation, and we know that there's a lot of investment, a lot of moving parts that happens with that. I mean, you've been around the world with the World Series, and you know exactly the big contingent that comes there. But yeah, my goal is, I've always had big goals, and I've ticked them off as I come along. I wanted to be the very best in the world. I wanted to win a Pro Tour or a European Championship or a World Champs. That's always going to be my goals. And from an event host and an organizer, I'm wanting to have the biggest event in Africa and showcase that on African soil, because I think that unlocks the gateway for more Africans coming through to the PDC. So,
playing devil's advocate, if there was a World Series in South Africa, where would it be?
There's no doubt it's going to be in my home city, which is Cape Town. I think that it lends itself to kind of showcasing and showing off South Africa in its best light. I mean, you've got literally everything around there, Table Mountain, which everybody knows, but also the luxuries that go with it. Being the second, I know that second is not great, but we've always been the first top spot for tourist destination in the world. We're now second. I can't remember to who, because yeah, they're not going to be there for long. But what I'm saying is having all of the PDC come over. They've been there in 2007, I think it was, when they piloted the World Series, the very first one, and it was probably too early to come to South Africa. But now I think that we're in the perfect position, and Cape Town is definitely our destination, and we're going to work super hard to get it there.
Obviously, yourself in all this journey, it's been a tough couple of years for yourself, and probably this year, I'm guessing, hurt more than ever, missing the World Cup. What's the last few years been for Devon Petersen?
I think it's been tough. It's been my biggest challenge because I think with an injury, you can't really tell how long you're going to recover. You can't also tell whether the operations are going to be successful. So you have to make big decisions. And the decisions I made was no operation. I'll heal on my own and make sure that I do the therapies. It's taken me longer than expected, but it's also given me an opportunity to take on bigger projects, to take on from an event organizing perspective. I mean, hosting ADG events, ACT, starting the Women's Series in South Africa, and doing all of those things and making sure that, for example, the inter-school league, which is growing at a phenomenal rate, we have close to 300 kids from schools competing, which is going to now move into the academy sector for some of them. And you realize that maybe sometimes there's a lot of good in the bad that we experience on a personal level, but you can give a lot more time to the sport itself. And I feel as though Dartboard Maths is the result of that, the African darts group growing in the way that it is, and also lending myself to other projects. But it doesn't mean that I stop dreaming about the world champs. It doesn't mean that I stop putting in positions of Dartboard Maths and everything else. And yeah, I really want to be at the high level when we deliver the next future in the product.
And the light goes out halfway through, as always. Good planning. But we'll just carry on chatting, as always, Dev.
Yeah.
Look, that ride that you've been on and everything like that, we know the highs that have been there. But darts can be a lonely place as well. Mentally, what's it been like these last couple of years? Forget the physical stuff. Mentally, what's it been? It's
tough. I think from a mental perspective, it is you have to have a strong mind. You have to deal with more disappointment, because I mean, we used to say when you're on a pro tour, 128 players enter the pro tour, only one leaves happy. The 127 is everybody's upset. They either fell out in the final round or they fell out in the first round. And this is what professional sport is all about. And the challenge that you do have is how do you invest your time when you are feeling lonely? How do you invest your time when there's a dark place? When you find yourself in a dark place, I always have this kind of analogy is, if you were seed and you're in a dark place, if you were dead seed, you are buried. If you a seed that have vision, you are planted, which means that you just kind of need that nutrients, you need that vision, you need to understand that what I can invest my time in will grow and foster and bear fruits, and this is kind of where I've been. So I feel as though everything that I have been doing is in a positive light with regards to my career, and it's brought my healing, not only from a physical perspective, but a spiritual and mental perspective as well. And I've been in a real great space with it, and I feel as though this is the reason why my return will be so much sweeter.
At one point, you were one of the best players in the world for that 3-4 month period when the scoring was on another level. You won your Euro Tour. How do you go from that high? And you can obviously, I know we spoke to you about it, you can see yourself slipping, and there's nothing you can do about it. How do you process that, going from one of the best to literally falling off?
It's a tough discussion you have to have with yourself. At that time when I won and I don't think I've ever told anybody this, but when I won the Euro Tour, that's when it started, when the injury started to kind of, I could feel there was something not right in my wrist, right? And then when I got to the semi-finals of the European Championships, that's when it was starting to really get painful, because then I was taking some paracetamols and making sure that like the pain stays away when I'm competing. And you don't speak about it, because as soon as players kind of something's wrong with you, there's blood in the water, and that fear factor disappears. So a lot of players didn't know that, and I still had the fear factor going in, and that was the advantage that I had, because they expected me, but I could see that my kind of form was dropping off. Even at the Worlds, I mean, that was one of the things where it was kind of slowly but surely at the end. And 2021, I knew that it's going to be a challenge for me. I had to change my throw. It didn't work, but I stuck with it. It just means that you have to be stronger mentally than you are physically, and just know that what's going to happen, and make sure that you have plans for when it does happen.
So you mean like a true politician, you were telling Porky Pies when you were telling everyone it was all right, yeah, the injury wasn't that bad?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you've probed, and I think that our relationship over the years, I mean, you know the background of a lot of it, and you would ask the questions where I would have to kind of straight-faced lie to you on podcasts. But the thing is for me, I knew exactly what I was doing, and where I was at in my game. I was comfortable with knowing that if I don't get it right, I might come off the tour, but I just needed to make sure that my landing, I have to have I need to be like a butterfly with socks on, just land softly, you know what I mean? So where I'm at right now, on the mend. I've done it before though. I've left the tour with an injury, a wrist injury, came back in 2015, went to the last 16, and then had the run that I had up and until now. So I'm expecting kind of a similar thing to happen now, qualify for the World Champs in Kenya next week, and then make a run in the World Champs, come back, get my tour card, and then have the career-ending kind of run up and until I retire.
How close are you now then to getting back to that all-conquering form that we saw?
I always feel as though it's a week away. It could be a week, it could be a month, it could be a year, but I do know that the fundamentals of my throw is back. So knowing exactly kind of what got me into that peak performance, that I'm working on that, because it's a small little window that I have, that pick up, release, and that pullback and the early release throw. So getting that rhythm, it's not hard to do. I know that. It's just me doing it consistently. So now that the grip is finally sorted out, there's no tension, there's no pain, there's no nothing, I can do that with ease. And I feel as though if I invested probably next 24 hours into practice, which is about another 4 days for me, I'd be solid. And I feel as though that's literally a week away, and I know that I might not be at the very best, but I'll be showing signs that I'm getting there.
What would it mean to return to Ali Pali this year?
I'll probably cry. I won't even lie. It will be like, it's literally been the darkest moments of my career, literally not knowing whether I'm going to come out on the other end. And as much as everybody might say the Pro Tour is tough, it is tough. But if you're a dart player and a professional and you really want, and you live and breathe the sport, it's the only place you can be. And for me, it's been sad. I feel as though, it's not that you let anybody down, but I've left my dreams kind of on hold, if you must call it that, because of an injury, and not because I had a mental breakdown or just form. It was literally something out of my control. And at some point I just thought, like, what if I just stop and I change my sport and all of those things? And a lot of the questions was, but that's not true to who you are and what you want to achieve. This is not who you are. You want to achieve that all-conquering world championship run. You want to make sure that you give it your best, because not only for me, but for my kids and for everybody else that you inspire, it's for them as well. Because when you look at that, it becomes an opportunity for them to go, he's done it, I can also do it. I've done that Black Arrows documentary, and we spoke about what it means to people outside of the sport itself and why the minority groups are not participating. Because there's not a lot of people that look like us that are at the very top. And that's one of the reasons why. And I really want to be that guy for them. So yeah, it's been sad, but I feel as though now with a rejuvenation and just me coming back, I feel as though I've kind of conquered all my deepest and darkest kind of demons, and I'm seeing the light for what it is right now.
Devon, absolute pleasure to see you smiling again and taking time out for us, mate. Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Phil. Thank you very much, and all the best, man.